Before we break down the latest on the Bengals, we are 177 subscribers away from 7,500. Help us get there. In exchange for subscribing for free, you'll get Bengals videos all off-season and regular season long. Hit that sub button right now. Can't say I thought today's video was going to begin with Odell Beckham to the Bengals, but that's what happens when Chad Johnson, formerly Ocho Cinco and other fun nicknames, is publicly recruiting OBJ to head to Cincinnati. Here's what Chad said on his show. Hey, Odell Beckham, come on down to Cincinnati. Let me know what you think about that. Catching balls from Joe Burrow. You will love it. Text my phone. By the way, kind of a funny, text my phone. What else are you going to text? Your BlackBerry? I don't know, which is also a phone? I don't know. Weird. Anyway, I digress. I'm not sure I love the idea. I get the desire to link big names to the Bengals. Fun spot to be in. Different times than what it was a couple seasons ago, years ago, whatever, as I'm sure everyone watching can recall. I just don't know about Beckham's fit specifically for the Bengals. Cheap one-year deal, sure, always passes the qualifier there. Don't know if Beckham wants a cheap one-year deal, by the way. You have Jamar Chase. You have Tee Higgins for at least one more year, in theory. More on that at the end of today's show. You have young players, Andre Yoshivas and Charlie Jones. Beckham would be the number 3 receiver on this team. And if you're paying very little for this type of production, that's great. 500-plus yards last year for the Ravens. I don't think many of us would say, you know what, Trenton Irwin, he's a better player than Odell Beckham. But the roles are different. The expectations are different. And Odell is not the same guy he was in his prime. He doesn't have the same juice, ability, dynamic, game-breaking potential that made him, the start of his career, one of the best receiver starts to a career in NFL history. It was insane. Is he going to be okay with a small role, the paycheck that comes along with that, and the limited target share that comes along with that? Part of the reason why NFL athletes become NFL athletes is that they are wired differently. And at a certain level, you want them to think they are the greatest thing ever. Sometimes it goes too much that direction with receivers in general, and certainly Odell fits that mold. I will say, I could live with an Odell signing. I have some hesitations over it. As long as I give him the 1-year, $15 million deal the Ravens gave him, if it's much cheaper, I'm fine with that. I also kind of want to draft a receiver in this year's class, though, and then the numbers game kind of gets a little bit dicey for me. So I could talk myself into it, but I'm not falling over myself to try to get it to go down. What do you think? Would you sign Odell Beckham if you ran the Bengals organization? OBJ for yes, no BJ for no. It's an all-time weigh-in. It's the pinned comment as well. Go vote right there. Xavien Howard, also on the free agency wish list for past and present Bengals. Mike Hilton, the Bengals starting nickel, tweeted at Xavien Howard, telling him to join the Bengals. Howard had said on one of his guest appearances that he wanted to join a contender. Hilton quote tweeted the tweet with, at Xavien Howard, which I once saw because, it was the at and didn't have the everything else along with it. Anyway, come join the Bengals. Now, allegedly, the Bengals were in on Christian Fulton, the now Chargers wideout corner who spent last year with Tennessee. Bengals allegedly made an offer. He said no, went to LA instead. Has been plenty of buzz. This team is in the market for some help at corner. And I think veteran help makes sense. Cam Taylor-Britt is one starter. He's on the outside. Mike Hilton is your nickel corner. We'll see what the future holds for Dax Hill. I think nickel might be his best fit. And DJ Turner didn't play great last year. I have hope of him getting better. But if your goal is to win games and win games big right now, you're anxious about playing him. You don't have any viable depth option. DJ, Ivy, Allen George, Jalen Davis. These guys aren't good enough if A, Turner does not improve, or B, if somebody gets hurt. It's a thin group right there. So Xavien Howard was once one of the best corners in football. He was impactful, dynamic, impressive, a ball hawk as well. But in part because of injuries, the play has begun to decline, and that does raise some red flags for teams like the Bengals. Also why he's unsigned, by the way, with a failed physical designation, which actually might bring down his cost a little bit, depending on how much he ends up getting in the open market. At a certain point, the Dolphins are still just paying him a little bit there. The yardage went up this year to relative to the games played and snaps and stuff. Interceptions went down. I don't think he's prime X anymore. I do think he can help a football team and be if not a starter, be a better, backup option, or at least be a great mentor for future. Maybe rotate guys. I think it's worth exploring for Cincinnati. So would you sign Xavien Howard? Y for yes, N for no. Sound off where else but the comments section. In general, I actually am very intrigued by the free agent cornerback market. Some veteran starters who are getting older. Stephon Gilmore, Patrick Peterson, Trey White coming off the injury, Xavien Howard. Some division rivals, Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, Rocky Sin. Steven Nelson's an intriguing piece out there at corner. I would probably not advise bringing back Eli Apple, but, Bengals liked him to a certain extent, I guess. Adoree Jackson's also very intriguing. The corner market's been quite stagnant. There's not been much movement so far. A couple guys signing probably means the offers aren't very good. I mean, kind of for like $8 million a year. That's lower than what people thought it was going to go for. That's probably the most you have to pay for one of these guys. Maybe get him for 3 or 4 potentially, depending on which player it ends up being. Now, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase NFL Jam shirt is still available. Go to chatsports.com/BengalsJam. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. If you don't remember what NFL Jam was, I feel bad for you. It was an awesome game way, way, way back when. I'm just barely old enough for it. Links in the comments and the description, chatsports.com/BengalsJam. Oh, look, more Tee Higgins trade rumors once again appearing. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler saying the Bengals are open to listening on Tee Higgins trade calls, which I would argue isn't actually new, but when ESPN discusses it, it becomes a national story once again. Here's what Fowler wrote, or said on SportsCenter. This was on Sunday or Saturday. I can't remember which one. Either way, he wants out. He has made the trade request. I talked to a few teams who are interested, who believe the Bengals are at least willing to listen. That's a little softer than they might have been a year ago when they were definitely not trading him. So teams are going to try to pry him out. New England's been high-end shopping for receiver help. Perhaps try to give up a day 2 pick to get Tee Higgins. Look, I do think the Bengals will listen. They know Higgins might not be on their team 2 years from now. They owe it to themselves in the same way they weren't going to listen last year and contract talk's not gone very well. I get all of that. I also don't think the Bengals would say, day 2 pick, sure, that's all we need. No, I don't buy that for a second. I think this team would have to be blown away to justify trading Tee Higgins. They would have to get, and the value starts with a first-round pick. Is that a lot? Absolutely. But the Bengals want to win a championship this year. And whether we agree or not, I do think they believe a path that is very strong if they keep Higgins on the roster. So I don't blame them for asking for a lot for Tee Higgins. An early second-round pick is probably pretty fair trade value to any outside observer. But specifically for what the Bengals' plans are, they know T's going to show up and play. The trade request was a request. It was not a demand because Higgins knows that in the end, if they don't trade him, he's going to show up and get the $21 million. That makes sense for everybody, right? More on this in a second. But what is the percent chance that you think the Bengals actually do trade away Tee Higgins? Low number, high number, drop the percentage in the comments. I do think there is a chance. I think it is a low one. I mean, you saw that A.J. Brown trade a few years ago, a first and a third on draft night. I think you might have give up a little bit more, or something at least in that ballpark for Tee Higgins. The reason being, and I get it, I think the Bengals want to see what the trio looks like when healthy. Some great numbers from the Athletics Paul Dehner of a healthy Bengals trio where they ranked in some slightly more advanced stats. Very small sample size to be clear. But when all 3 guys were out there and healthy, they were first in yards per play, first in success rate, second in EPA per play, first in sack rate, the O-line played better, second in adjusted net yards per attempt, and first in yards per carry. Having Higgins out there with healthy Burrow and Chase, teams are so scared of the passing game, everything worked better as a result. Higgins' numbers were down this year. I don't think the two sides are that close to a contract. You saw L'Jarius Sneed not go for that much because of the contract. That's why I think in the end no trade happens. I think it makes more sense for all parties involved to play it out for at least one more year, and then we'll see what happens.